Well, hello and welcome back to the summit. Today we have Nicole Sawyers on with us. She's a woman I met through Women Within as well, and she is a doula in Philadelphia. I believe you're in Philadelphia, right? She's so close, and I don't see her enough. But she's learned a lot of wisdom about pregnancy and about motherhood and parenting, and I think that this is so essential because it's one of the places in my life I know where I had the most questions about whether I'm doing it right, and probably the most anxiety, because it's one thing for me to be messing up my own stuff, but to think about, how I'm raising children, I know that that can be quite stressful for a lot of people, and decision making can get a little muddied, especially when we hear everybody else's opinion and then try to take in our own intuition. So Nikki's going to connect us back to our intuition around parenting and pregnancy. And so welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and welcome, and thank you so much for joining our summit.
Well, thank you for having me. My name's Nicole. I live in Philadelphia currently. I am a labor and postpartum doula, and I am also a mother of three. I have a 15, a 12, and a 2.5-year-old. And I really became passionate about doula work and connecting with families and helping families to empower themselves to make informed decisions and, trusting their intuition so they can have a more satisfactory birth and postpartum experience. And hopefully that leads on into parenting and years beyond. So a little bit about how I got into doula work. And this will tie into the trusting of your intuition and that voice inside that says, do this. And it may be a loud voice that jumps out at you and you're like, whoa, what was that? Or it could be such a small, subtle voice that you might ignore it if there are things going on in your life, stresses. You might have fears around certain things, so you're not really connecting into your inner wisdom, which we all have. And one of the things I like to tell my clients is that we already know. Now, it's certainly not our first go-to. Like, say you get pregnant and automatically the first thing you think of is, okay, now I have to find an OB or a midwife. And there's all those questions, but you get in gear and you just do what you do. You just do what everybody else does. And that's that. But there's a profound wisdom that comes with a lot of those choices from the beginning. And many times we won't realize that we should tap into those choices from the beginning and not halfway through when we're saying, oh, this feels, not so good. What do I do? So it's good to have this knowledge going into, but it's never too late.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Because I think so often we think that, especially if we're new parents, we've never had a baby before, we always think like everybody with kids somehow knows better than we do. And I think, like you're saying, there's an innate wisdom in us that's born in us, that voice that really can guide us. And just because it's disagreeing with other people around you doesn't mean that it's necessarily wrong, and I think a lot of us might second guess that choice if we've never been parents before.
Absolutely. And that goes with, choices during pregnancy, during labor, birth, postpartum. And one of the things that is really important to me are the feelings that I felt afterwards when I didn't trust my gut. And some of them were very subtle, but there were a few really huge bits of knowledge that were coming from inside of me. And I didn't have the balance that it took to discern what was my voice and what was maybe a fear. I was thinking it was just a fear, but really it was my body trying to guide me because my body knew, and I had that wisdom already within me. So one of those things was when I was pregnant with my son, I learned what a doula was. And, through researching and really learning what a doula was and what a doula does for families, I immediately had this thing in my stomach, and it was this feeling that says, oh, I want a doula for my birth. I should get a doula. And I was really into, researching birth, and I had already given birth 2 times, 9 years prior and, 11 years prior. And it was so much different. I was older and I felt different. And there was this voice saying, okay, dig deeper into this, get more connected, listen to your body, go with your inner voice. And I didn't. And, afterwards, looking into it and actually becoming a doula, I could kick myself.
Yeah.
Because, what I put into families and, the look of strength and empowerment in the eyes of someone that's giving birth, I just know that this is, an important passion. And it stemmed from me actually not following my gut. And so I wanted to get the information out there, to help make more informed decisions. So there is a profound wisdom within us that is worth tapping into. Many times we already know. How many times have we looked back in hindsight and said, I really wish I would not have followed my gut?
Not many.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're talking about those teenage years, that wasn't really my gut.
It certainly wasn't.
That was my hormones, I think.
Yeah. And it's almost always the opposite. I wish I would have listened to my gut instinct. And it can be intimidating to follow your gut instinct, especially against the advice of others, or when you can't explain what that feeling is.
And also, I think when you're felt to be made less than, like, I know that there's women who talk, and I'm so sorry, my eye is watering. I'm really not crying over your story.
It's okay. But it's very touching stuff.
Yeah, when you hear like a mother-in-law or something tell you, oh no, you can't do it that way. Like, it's always been, and they act as if like you're kind of crazy or whatever, when other people belittle your intuition. I think it can, if you're not strong enough, if I'm not strong enough, I can definitely be swayed and be like, oh, okay, well, they must know better. They raised 4 kids.
And it can be confusing when you're hearing these messages from well-meaning people.
People that love you, yeah.
Yeah. People that love you, people that genuinely want the best for you, medical professionals, friends as well. There's never a shortage of people around who would like to tell you what you should do, how they did it. Or their rules, regulations, policies, guidelines, and then you have to fit into those as well. And what if your gut goes against those? Do you have the courage, to step into that question and say, what's more important? What my body is telling me, is this a fact?
Yeah, is it the truth? That's always a good question, because we can tell ourselves stories.
Yeah, and we can almost fall into a routine. And sometimes routines are completely unnecessary and are only for, I want to say, the convenience of everyone else involved. So if our gut instinct goes against those guidelines, there's a whole another section of, what do I do? It can be confusing. So during pregnancy, we're faced with decisions about our body, um, decisions about our baby, and about our birth.
Mm-hmm.
So where to birth, hospital, birth center, home,
I
right?
didn't even know if there was an option. I gotta tell you, like until there was those birthing shows or whatever, like I mean, my mother was a nurse. She went to the hospital. Like, are you crazy? Like that was it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There was no other way. And not as far as I was raised. So I think that that's so important to know that there's always choice. I mean, no matter what it comes to in life, there's always choice. And there's definitely choice when it comes to parenting. You know, there's many different ways of having that child. And I would have never known half of these if I didn't know Nicole.
Yeah. And what's right for you might not be right for me.
Right.
And that's okay. Uh, how to birth. Um, in the water. Do I birth in the water? Do I want to be in bed? Do I want to be squatting? Do I want to be on my hands and knees? Do I want to have 10 people standing there, watching this like it's a spectator sport? Would I like to
I
be?
always found that a little creepy, but hey, to
Yeah.
each their own. Some people are very close to their families.
Yeah, me, not so much. This last time, I had this feeling like I wanted to be alone. Like
Mm.
I actually wanted somebody to lock the door so nobody could come in and out checking on me,
Mm.
because it seemed that I was more comfortable and I made more progress when I was not being watched.
I see.
So, and then you have, who will my care provider be? Would I like an obstetrician? Would I like a midwife?
Mm-hmm.
Um, who will be there to support me? My partner? Would I like a friend? Would I like to hire a doula?
Mm.
And really, ask yourself these questions. And when you make a decision, you can always change that decision and go another route if it doesn't sit right with you.
Right. Yeah. Because you never know when it comes to the time how you're. I mean, if somebody would have been like, "Well, how are you going to feel?" And like, I have no idea. And to me, labor was much different than I had imagined it to be. Um, and so, yeah. I mean, I think feel free to change your plan. Just because you make one plan doesn't mean that maybe your intuition just needed you to start with that piece, and then you need
Yeah.
to go somewhere else. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea because just because your intuition changes doesn't mean that you're wrong.
Yeah. And the decisions don't stop there.
Oh no, because now you've got 18 plus years.
Yes. So then you have uh, the routine procedures that you have to consult your inner wisdom about. How do they make you feel? Just because they're routine may not mean that they are, what you should decide upon.
Mhm.
And you can always ask for time. You can always say, I'd like to think about this, and then consult your inner wisdom. You can consult, the technical aspect, your medical providers, your support person,
If
your
you need
family,
it. Yeah.
and then you sit with that and trust your body as well, take like that balance. Um, so then there's many different decisions, how I'm going to feed my baby, how I'm going to diaper my baby, who's going to visit after the birth. If you don't feel like having visitors and they make you uncomfortable, that's a sign. Your body is telling you
Mm.
that you need some time for yourself, some bonding time with
Yeah.
you, maybe one family member.
Yeah, I mean, people don't think that they think because they have the baby, they have to allow people in the house to see this baby. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. You're allowed to say, no, I'm tired, or I just need this time, or whatever. I think that that's a fantastic point because some people can feel obligated to
They absolutely, I talk to many women who feel obligated, and they actually ask me for advice on how to navigate that situation when they have 10 family members who want to come take pictures and, are coming in and out of the hospital when you're trying to maybe establish your breastfeeding relationship, or you're just feeling, I just gave birth, and, you may not want everyone in there, and that's okay. So you can make the choice to either consult your gut instincts and really listen to what your body's telling you, or you can go into default mode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like go with the flow.
Yeah, but then we never feel good about that later. I mean, that's one thing. So I chose for my son not to be circumcised for several reasons. And one of them was that a friend of mine had a baby boy in the same Army hospital weeks before, and they completely messed up his circumcision. I was like, no way. Plus, my husband at the time was not circumcised, so it didn't really make that much of a difference to me. And when I did all the research, and that's what I did, because as soon as I heard about her baby, I was like, well, let me figure this one out.
This one real quick.
I don't need to do this. And so I did a lot of research, and I had to sit with myself. And I mean, I did a less formal way of processing this, but now that I think about it, I think it was really, there was many days where I asked myself this question, like, am I going to have this child circumcised? And I really sat with myself, and when it came to it, I stuck by it. And, they're not always, they came in and asked me several times if I was sure. That's all I can say is, and I was solid. And even though I hadn't started my personal growth work at that time, looking back, I'm so grateful that there was something in me, that crone in me that said, no, I don't think so. And there's never been a problem. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot of stories that are similar to that. And then I also hear the opposite.
Defaulted,
the default mode. Or I often hear that someone will consult their inner wisdom and ask that question, will I be circumcising my son? And they get that gut instinct that says, no, it's not necessary. And if it's not necessary, no, thank you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that decision, they'll be strong with it, and, it'll carry them through, and, their motherly instinct made the decision as quickly as that, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And then there are instances where we can ignore that motherly instinct and go into default mode because we are thinking, like I mentioned earlier, that it's just a fear.
Yeah, and then it's sheep, and then we become, and I hate to use the word like sheep, but we do what other people, well, if 90% of the people are getting their child circumcised, then it must be okay, and it must be fine. And I mean, and it's truth. And I'm not trying to be against anybody who chooses to circumcise. That is not what I'm saying at all. For me, that was my choice. Now, if it's your choice to circumcise and you have family members that don't want you to, I mean, it's still up to you to use your inner wisdom, what is best for your child.
Yeah, and more often than not, just trusting, just sitting with the question and, looking at your baby, holding your baby, trusting that your body did exactly what it was meant to do, and that your baby's here and everything's okay, and just consulting your instincts. And I can say personally for me, I had a raging instinct not to, to leave him as is. And I was the only one, I think, with everyone around me. And somehow, the circumstances were very unfortunate. And, I would say, I wouldn't say went against, but quieted.
You kind of
Yeah.
stuff that voice
Kind of,
down so that you have
yeah,
to hear it and go, it's going to be fine. Everybody says it's
yeah,
going to be fine.
yeah. Because I didn't think that either way, that
hmm
one decision was wrong and one was right. I didn't. I just, I was like, okay, maybe I'm supposed to be feeling no because I just had the baby, and maybe this is why I'm feeling mushy, and I blamed it on my
I feel
hormones.
like that must be where it starts with parents, right? Because like their entire life, there's so few things that are actually wrong, right? I mean, it's just that we're always trying to choose from different choices, different,
Yeah,
not necessarily right or wrong, but just different. And I think that's what's so challenging. And I think one of the reasons that we do so much shaming of each other is just because those decisions are hard and we want to believe that our choice is right. You know what I mean? And it is, it's right for our kids. But
yeah,
that's something to remember, is that it's right for us. So and I know we talked about this before, but like, I really hope that we can put the parent shaming down
absolutely.
world because there's nothing that makes somebody a worse parent than being judged 24/7. And if you ever want to know what that's like, I promise you, take a 4-month-old on a cruise vacation and you'll get a whole week's worth of people telling you what's right, what's not. And that's what I went through, like, oh, you're holding him too much, you're going to spoil him.
Oh
Oh my
yeah.
gosh, you have to pick him up more, he's always in that stroller. Oh my gosh, he can't be in the sun. Oh, you shouldn't have that cover on him. I mean, it was just like there was no end to the grandmas and grandpas that wanted to give me advice. And it
Oh my
was
goodness.
nerve-wracking because it started me to believe that I couldn't trust my own instincts, that I didn't know what I was doing. And then by the end of the week I realized that they're all crazy because I couldn't possibly embrace all of their advice at the same time because it was so contradictory.
Yeah.
So by the end of the week I was finally like, well, I just got to do what I think is right.
Yeah. And most times when we shut out, those outer voices, we can tune into our inner voice, and it leads for a more satisfactory parenting when you're not taking in all of that shame
Mm-hmm.
that other people may be projecting, because if we're not doing it the same way that they were doing it, we must be doing it wrong. And sometimes those feelings are projected onto us. Well, why are they doing it that way? The way we did it was right. Are they trying to say that we did it wrong? What are they trying to say? So, it really can get complicated. So, and that starts during pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
It
Oh
really
yeah,
does.
you should be eating this. Why are you eating that? You can't have that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we
And
no longer own our own bodies or have any wisdom about them. Like we have to be told by somebody else. It's amazing, isn't it?
yes, everyone has something to say. So that starts in pregnancy. It doesn't end in labor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People might have ideas about how they want to see you labor or birth. And it really boils down to, what is your body telling you during labor? If you're laying in bed on your back and you have this urge to want to get up on your hands and knees, and you don't, and you're feeling pain and you're in your head and you're not, tapping into your rhythm, and just trusting your body and trusting birth, it can be more painful. And you can really feel like you're being, you know, just pressed down on by everyone around you, when most times, as birthing people, we just want to get up, move around, get into positions that make us feel comfortable. And if you want to squat with one foot up on the toilet, if that is what makes you feel good, if you want to have your doula in a headlock, and pushing down on her, which I've had happen, was great. It was a light headlock. But she felt empowered with her foot up. Her body told her where to go, how to move. Her body told her to wrap her arm around my neck, and she listened. So what does my body want? Does this feel right? Does this make me comfortable? You know, does this give me peace? So, I mean, I think that's really important.
Yeah, well, because so often, what do we see in all the movies, right? They're always laying on their back and stuff. And when I actually went into labor, I was like, oh, I can move around and stuff. Like I thought I was bedridden. You're only bedridden if you have an epidural, I believe. But other than that, like it's actually helps to walk around and get movement. And I found for me that laying down was not the best way. Of course, I was in an army hospital, so there was a lot of issues there. And I had a lot of people in my room, and I had a really mean nurse. So
Oh,
yeah, the best person in my labor and delivery room was some doctor who had just first day on the labor and delivery floor, and he was just like an intern type. I forget what they call them, residents or whatever.
yeah.
But he was just the intern. His first trial day on labor and delivery, and he was the greatest. I swear the kid must have been in the back before YouTube, but somehow doing research on like, what can I get this woman to do to like push out the baby and blah, blah, blah. Because my labor was really long. And in the army, they don't cut you open unless they actually have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of pushing for a lot of hours, and he was my only savior. The other woman she was trying to teach two intern nurses how to use the computer while I was pushing, and I was just like, I
Yeah.
only had the one birth, so it was scary enough for me, and then to go to Army Hospital was something. But yeah, and yeah, exactly, and there's instincts, and I could have easily let that woman take away all the glory of my birth, and make it really, really horrible, and listen to everything that she had to say. And if I would have listened to her, I mean, I might still have that baby in me now.
Oh man.
Because she was just so mean. I felt like what she was doing was really counteracting the progress that I was making, and I think that that's what happens when we don't listen to our inner wisdom. We can completely go in the opposite direction than we really want to go.
Yeah. And your body can tighten up.
Mm,
You know, your body can tighten up. If your jaw is tight,
the stress,
your
yeah.
cervix is tight. You
Mm,
know, if you're squeezing, it's like you're, in a sense, you feel these outward disturbances all around you, and you don't want to let your baby out. Your
oh.
body is saying like, oh, there's some chaos going on around here. Let's keep the baby safe for a little while
Well,
longer.
no wonder it took me so long to push then. The baby was like, I ain't going out there.
Like he hears all those beeps and all those voices, and
And
my
that mean,
mom's
squishy
clenching up.
woman.
Yeah, yeah. So those little things may not seem like that big of a deal,
Mm.
but when you are an animal and you are in labor, and a lot of animals, they go away. You know, they go into the
Yeah,
woods.
they go hide.
And a lot of women, you know, I've seen videos of women completely following their gut
Mm-hmm.
and going and giving birth in a river. Now, I might not do that, but that was right for her.
Right. Yeah. Her body knew exactly. And now, I mean, looking back at it with my inner wisdom, I do wish that I would have told that nurse to go shove it somewhere else. You know what I mean? And requested another one because it
Oh,
was stressful because of that. And it was my first baby. I didn't know what I was doing. Like you can watch all the birthing videos you want in the world. Ain't nothing like actually giving birth.
yeah. You can say you are prepared,
Yeah.
but then when it actually happens and your body kicks in,
Yeah.
you know,
And that's when you need to, I think, really depend on your inner wisdom even more, because there's so much going on that you really, instead of listening to everybody else, we all have the inner wisdom that we need. I truly believe that. And even when it comes to parenting, there may not be any written guide, but we do have a guide. We can feel our way through, and we understand how to parent, I believe, naturally.
yeah, we do. We already have those things inside of us, and that leads me into we already have touched on it a little bit, but I want to talk about outer wisdom versus inner wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's good to be able to tap into that inner wisdom while still receiving wisdom from outer sources. So those outer sources can be, like watching the videos, YouTube videos, watching things like The Business of Being Born, great documentaries.
Reading the what to expect when you're expecting or whatever.
Yeah, and there are some really great ones like Birthing from Within is a really great one. And also, so reading books, talking to your friends, sharing stories, getting wisdom from your doctors, like the medical and the technical aspects, but then to find the balance and being able to take that information and say, okay, does this apply to me? Is this something that is necessary? Is this something that is routine and just based off of convenience, or based out of convenience for everyone but you? And it's
Does
good.
it feel right? I mean, that to me is
Yeah.
like usually what it tells me is, does this feel right? And you'll know. I think that we know if we actually sit down and ask that. So I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead to inner wisdom.
That's all right. The inner wisdom can sometimes prompt us into checking in with our inner wisdom, because sometimes we have to be presented with those questions or those suggestions or recommendations. Let's say we are at prenatal appointment number 5, and we begin to start talking about our birth preferences or birth plan. Now, our OB might be sharing knowledge with us, medical terminology, and we can take that information in, and then we can go do some research. And then when we come back, if we have a question, we can take some more information and then go back to doing our own research and sitting with ourselves. But one thing that I really talk to my clients about is, how are they responding to your questions? Do you feel comfortable asking your provider questions? Are they giving you pro and con? Are they talking about making informed decisions and, telling you that it's your choice? Or are they just telling you what they do as a standard procedure, or what their policy is, without even, having any leeway for you to make different decisions for your labor or for your birth?
Yeah, it's definitely easy for a woman to think that there is like no choices, because there's a lot of doctors, and I'm quite certain, because again, I went to a military hospital, but they didn't really give me options. It was just like, okay, your next appointment's here, okay, and then you're gonna, and when you're in labor, you're gonna go to the hospital. You know what I mean? Like that was it. Like, I know that they never mentioned a doula to me, and I had heard of them, just from the birth stories on TV or whatever. But I didn't really know of any. Like, I didn't know anybody who even used any. So I hadn't even considered it. And that's why I really love the idea of everyone meeting with a doula to at least hear the options that they have during their pregnancy. I think it's so essential, because we can't possibly bring that out of our inner wisdom if we have no idea that it's a choice.
Exactly. And one thing a doula can do is be a buffer for the outer wisdom and the inner wisdom, and a buffer and someone to build the bridge between you and your provider. A doula can help you understand certain terminology and explain things better in a way that your doctor might not have explained or didn't have the time to explain.
Yeah, or more a balanced way. If they're, just on their routine or habits of what they do, they might not, again, they may not mention that there's a choice there, where a doula would be able to see that, okay, yeah, he said this, but, there are some options around this. And it's so true. Doctors don't, a lot of doctors don't tend to spend a lot of time with their clients, and they can't because of the way that they are billing and, whatever their excuses are, it happens. And it's a shame because these are a lot of big choices, and some of these choices impact your child for the rest of their life. I mean, whether or not they're circumcised still impacts them for the rest of their life. It changes something about them.
Yeah.
Is it going to be death defying? No, like it's not going to be life or death decision, of course, but they're definitely decisions that are important. And to not know that you have options, I mean, is really, I think, I didn't know that I could get a lactation specialist. And I mean, that was challenging for me because they tell you like, oh, breastfeed, it's so natural. And let me tell you, for a lot of women, it doesn't feel so natural. It can be really difficult and challenging. And especially if you feel like the baby's not getting enough food and you can't, I mean, it was really frustrating for me at first. So I would have loved to know ahead of time that there was people out there that could have helped me, and instead of struggling through it, because instead of it being like this joyous thing that people talk about and isn't it beautiful and blah, 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 it was just like, oh, I remember I would get like anxious about it because it felt so difficult to me. And then that, of course, like you said, it restricts your body. And now my milk's like, I'm not coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean,
stress can actually prevent that letdown. Stress can, inhibit and sometimes even decrease your supply. And if you don't know, you don't know. And breastfeeding can be very natural to some. It can come very naturally. It can come naturally one time and then the next time be very difficult. And you can have a range of difficulties, and sometimes, not having someone to talk to about it and not knowing that there's someone that you can go to who's actually an expert.
Yeah, that actually has techniques that you can actually try and stuff. I mean, because we just see it in the movies, like, oh, you put baby to breast and boom, it's done. And it's like, that doesn't always work that way. It's great when it does, and it does sometimes, but.
Yeah, so that's another thing that a doula would be able to help get you set up with someone who knows the ins and outs of breastfeeding, can assess the situation, and then make other referrals. So that's important stuff. So, finding your inner wisdom and learning to trust your inner wisdom, that can be applied to, pregnancy, labor, birth, breastfeeding.
Discipline as they get older. I mean, so many things, like when you decide to potty train, when you decide to, do different milestones with them. I mean, I think it's all intuition. Every kid is different too. So, I mean, it's going to be a different intuition with different kids each time, like I don't have more than one kid, but I imagine for you that there's certain understandings with different kids, that there's different intuition for each kids. I know your kids have different personalities. So there's different, just like there's different personalities, there's going to be different things that are right for each one,
Yeah. And it feels good to be able to tap into the inner wisdom for one child and then moving right along to the next. And sometimes it's really, really difficult. Sometimes it can feel like the hardest thing in the world because it can make you, feel inadequate at times. If you're having issues with one of your children, or, they start to become teenagers. Yeah. And then you're like, what am I going to do about this? Do I tell her absolutely no makeup, or do I tell her that she can use this, and that?
Yeah.
Colors, I mean,
what do I say when they say, but all my friends do it? I mean, there's so many the thing I've learned about parenting, it never becomes easier. It's just a different level of hard. Like it goes from like the physical lack of sleep to the physical of just running around after them to like, and then as it comes a teenager, then it's so much more mental as to like what is important for me to teach them versus what the world's going to teach them. And, you know, and it's so challenging all the time. And I think even definitely as they get older, we use that intuition even more and more because there's so many decisions. And again, there's so many decisions that aren't right or wrong. It's just what is the best thing for this child to learn this lesson or to better himself for the world, you know, whatever that is. What is my job here? How am I supposed to mother this? And sometimes that's with compassion and sometimes that's with grounding, you know. It just depends on what the situation is. And I believe that my intuition is always, when I started listening to it, it always has led me down a path that's been more calm and more steady for my kid, where if I'm not in touch with my inner wisdom, those are the times that I go crazy. You know, those are the times where I'm really so disconnected that I fly off the handle. And thankfully, those don't happen very often.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's what they say, that you're always emotionally triggerable when you're sick, angry, lonely, tired, or there's one more, but sick, angry, hungry. Yes, hangry. I get so hangry. It's not even.
That's halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
There you go. Yeah, I think they use it in 12 step, but it's anything, any habit that you have, you're more likely to go back to your default. You know, whether that's not listening to your intuition or whatever, you're most likely to go back to your default if you're in that halt situation, which is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I always say halts because I think sick is one of them for me too. If I'm sick, forget it.
True. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I always say to my husband, I always say, "Are you hangry?" I'm like, "Let's do something
commercial."
We'll talk after dinner, okay? For now, we're just gonna, okay?
Oh, I tell my husband, I'm like, look, I just want you to know I'm really hungry. I'm cranky right now. I really don't want to talk until I eat something.
Exactly.
And he's learned it's for the best.
True. And that can affect, you know, us being able to find and trust our inner wisdom because it's really chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially for people that are sensitive to those things, which I am.
Mm-hmm.
It can really feel chaotic and out of control. And then I'm not connected.
Yeah.
I'm up here, you know, because it's the emotion. The emotion is up here. And it's said that the thinking is in the mind and the knowing is in the body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people are talking about something, you know, and they say like, I know, and they usually like, they're like, I know, or they're like, you know, I had this really bad feeling, and they put their hand on their stomach. That's your body. You know, that's where the knowing is. So you have to check in with that from time to time because it's hard. We slip in and out of that. And if there's a lot of technical information going on around us, a lot of those outer sources, then we might be riding that wave.
Yeah.
And you never know when you're going to miss that really important thing that your body is trying to tell you, that inner wisdom that knows, you know? So either way, whether the voice is subtle or whether it's loud, if we're not aware and actively listening to it, we go into default mode. And for many of us, including myself, you know, that can mean huge regret.
Yeah, it can mean just following whoever has an answer, right? Because sometimes I know when I have so many choices, I can get overwhelmed and I'm just like, well, I'll go with whatever they're going with, you know, like at a restaurant or whatever. And that might seem like an insignificant choice, But we can do that with big choices too. We can say, I'll default to mom because, I'm just overwhelmed and I don't want to think about it, and I think, what we're learning with this Inner Wisdom Summit is that it really has to do with becoming still, and what I'm hearing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is your advice is to basically go get the facts, go get all the information from all the resources, from your doctor, from the places that you do the resource, that you find resources and you can do research. And then bring it back, once you know all there is that you can really know about that thing, bring it back and get still and really hear what your body has to say about it. Not all the stories in your mind that says, oh, well, mom says this and dad says that, and I should really, and I need to, but really feel it in your body, because there are different messages in our body. I can think that I'm like at the end of a workday, I'm perfectly fine and clear. And yet if I check in with my body, I'll notice that I'm actually like this. And like my breaths are this big and, and I'm like, and I don't even notice it until I'm like, I'm not tense. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Oh,
Eyes popping out of your head, shoulders up to here.
Yeah. And so until I actually check in. And so that's become, and that's what Woman Within really does, right? If you don't know Woman Within, we're always checking in. We check in, we check out, we check and constantly check. How are we feeling? 2 words. And
checkity check.
Yeah, that's become a very important part for me though, because like if I know I'm feeling stressed or if I know I'm feeling happy, those feelings are influencing the stories that I'm telling myself. So if I'm in a happy mood, of course I'm happy. I'm telling myself great stories. Yeah. But if I'm in a sad mood or depressed or feeling helpless, especially, I can tell myself all kinds of stories about why everybody else is right and I would be wrong, and that my intuition isn't worth listening to.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Feeling inadequate, feeling
not. I know. How would I know? I don't have a kid. I should listen to everyone else.
Yeah, that feeling of I'm going to make the wrong decision anyway. So I'll leave it up to this person who has X amount of years of experience and just bypass completely my instincts. Yeah. Or just take a detour around those instincts and go with what this person has to say. So, it really boils down to, like I said, taking that outer wisdom, mm-hmm. Consulting our inner wisdom, finding our inner wisdom, then being able to trust our inner wisdom. And that's hard if you haven't had practice or you can't explain it. So you have to know what it is.
Yeah.
And does it bring you clarity? Mm-hmm. When you make a decision from your body, does it bring you peace? Mm-hmm. Do you feel at ease? Or is there something pulling at you, and are you sweeping that away? It's very important to just check in with those little intricacies that we might feel in our body, like that tenseness or that knot in our throat when we say yes to a decision, but it doesn't sit right with us. We can always say, you know what? I think I'm going to take a little bit of time to think about this. Yeah. That's with any decision that you make: pregnant, labor, birth, postpartum, parenting, life, relationships, mm-hmm. Taking that time.
Help. There is definitely support out there that is unbiased. I believe that there's a lot of doulas out there that just want their clients to have the best experience for them, like yourself, where you're just like, I'm not imposing any restrictions on my clients. If they want to go walk into the woods and have their baby, well, that's their choice. That's their thing. And so when you get somebody like that who is really knowledgeable about all of the pieces and doesn't have a stake in any of it, right? The doctor is not, it's not the doctor, because the doctor is often worried about, their tempo and their time and how everything gets done and that they can do all their checklists. But getting somebody who really has no expectation or, dog in the fight, basically, that doesn't, wants you to just do it for yourself. And that's, whether that's a doula when you're pregnant or after you're pregnant, or that's a therapist when you get older,
Yeah.
to really help yourself work through things. There are people out there to support you. I mean, of course, me and Nicole would tell you that, get yourself a woman's circle if you're a woman. Go to Woman Within and find yourself an open circle that you can go start attending. Because I think that it's really important when we start supporting each other. We can really, my intuition has really grown from sitting in circle because other women, affirm and validate the fact that, my thoughts are true, my story is valid and my opinions are valid. And that if I feel a certain way, that there is a reason, and they'll stick by me and, make sure that I follow my intuition rather than doing that last minute back down because I'm too afraid to tell my doctor I don't want a vaccination, or I'm too afraid to tell, whatever it is, that I don't have fear just because somebody else knows better. And I really think that that's the gist of this talk, is that just because other people have more experience in some areas does not mean that they know better.
Yeah. Just because they have experience doesn't mean that they have experience being you.
Being you and having your baby. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. I think that this is such an important topic. And, if I can add anything else, it's like, stop shaming each other. let's lift women up. And these are all hard decisions, and everybody's got their own reason for making them, whether they breastfeed or they don't breastfeed, or they put their kid in daycare or they don't put their kid in daycare, or they use the cloth diapers or the disposables. I mean, there's just so many things that we can tear each other down about. And let's just say that we all want to raise really healthy, well-intended kids, kids that are whole would be, fantastic for me. I don't care what kind of diapers they grew up in. But kids that are creating less damage to others, and let's just support each other, let's love each other to our better selves rather than tear each other down.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and leading by example. If I see another woman trusting in her inner wisdom and, saying her truth and not really, just stepping into her power and being empowered and making decisions from that place, that gives me permission to do that as well. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons that I became a doula. It's a passion. I'm not trying to save women, or families from their own decisions.
Oh yeah, you're not trying to change their mind or anything. Yeah. I've never heard anything like that. You're really supportive of whatever they choose. And and I really love that. And that to me is like, I mean, that's the Woman Within spirit too, is that every person knows their own answers. Every person has their own wisdom. And when we shame each other about that, we're really telling each other that your wisdom isn't wise, that it's not valid. And we don't want to do that, because when we start doing that, that's when people make really bad decisions, because they start questioning everything they do. I know for me, it throws me completely out of whack. So luckily I've gotten to the place where I can hear what other people have to say and I don't have to take it in. I can look at it if I want to, and I can choose to say, well, that fits for me or it doesn't. And that's really what it comes down to. So don't trust just anybody just because they say they have the experience or the understanding. They don't have the experience. Like Nikki said, you don't have the experience and understanding of being in this body. And, with my life experience and what I know. So fantastic. Well, all of Nicole's information is below. So if you have any questions, you just you can pop them right into the comment section. I'll make sure that she gets them and that she'll answer them for you. Definitely. If you have any comments about your birth or whatever, I'd love to hear them. We'd like to hear all about your stories. So post them below and we will get back to you. And again, all of her information is below as well. So if you need a doula or you know somebody who might, she's got some great information for you. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody watching.
Yeah.